The crystal chandeliers of Le Bernardin cast prismatic rainbows across the pristine white tablecloths, each table a small island of luxury in Manhattan's most exclusive dining establishment. The soft murmur of cultivated conversation mixed with the gentle clink of Waterford crystal and sterling silver, creating an atmosphere where only the city's elite felt comfortable spending a month's salary on a single meal. In the corner booth, near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, sat a man who seemed utterly out of place. His well-worn jeans had seen better days. His black t-shirt was simple cotton without a designer label in sight, and his motorcycle boots had clearly traveled many miles. He sat quietly, reading a paperback book while nursing a cup of coffee, completely at peace with himself despite the opulent surroundings that demanded attention and admiration. What happened next would leave everyone in that restaurant completely speechless, and serve as a reminder that sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected encounters. But before we dive into this incredible story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love connecting with our global audience. And if you enjoy stories about celebrities showing their true character, make sure to subscribe because we have another amazing story coming tomorrow that will absolutely blow your mind. The stage is set. The restaurant buzzed with its usual evening energy. Servers glided between tables with choreographed precision, their movements as refined as ballet dancers. The sommelier discussed vintage Bordeaux with a table of hedge fund managers, while across the room a tech mogul's wife photographed her truffle risotto for her Instagram story. This was a world where appearances mattered more than substance, where the price tag on your outfit spoke louder than the content of your character. The man in the corner seemed oblivious to all of this. He turned pages slowly, occasionally taking a sip from his coffee cup, completely absorbed in whatever story had captured his attention. There was something almost anachronistic about his presence, like a time traveler from a simpler era who had wandered into this temple of materialism. His dark hair fell slightly across his face as he read, and despite being in his late 50s, there was something timeless about his quiet dignity. The other diners barely noticed him, too caught up in their own displays of wealth and status. But one person did notice, and she was not pleased with what she saw. The influencer arrives. Madison Worthington swept into Le Bernardin like she owned the place, her 6-inch Christian Louboutin heels clicking against the marble floor with practiced authority. Everything about her screamed expensive, from her perfectly blown-out platinum blonde hair to her custom Hermès dress that cost more than most people's cars. Her jewelry caught the light with every movement, creating a dazzling display that was impossible to ignore. Madison had built her empire on being seen, on being envied, on convincing 2 million Instagram followers that her life was worth aspiring to. She was the definition of influencer culture, beautiful, wealthy, and completely convinced that her material success made her inherently superior to everyone around her. Her phone was perpetually in her hand, ready to capture the next moment that would generate likes, comments, and brand partnership deals. As the maître d' led her to her reserved table, one of the best in the house, naturally, her eyes swept the room with the calculating gaze of someone who constantly evaluated everyone around her in terms of their net worth and social media following. That's when she spotted him. The man in jeans and a t-shirt, sitting in a prime booth, reading a book like he was at a neighborhood coffee shop instead of one of the most exclusive restaurants in the world. Madison's perfectly sculpted eyebrows furrowed in disgust. How had someone like that even gotten past the door? Didn't this place have standards? First contact. Madison's table was positioned with a clear view of the offending individual, and she found herself unable to focus on her companion, a fellow influencer who was discussing their upcoming collaboration on a jewelry line. Every few minutes, her gaze would drift back to the man with the book, her irritation growing with each glance. "I mean, seriously," she finally interrupted her friend mid-sentence, gesturing not so subtly toward the corner booth. "Look at that guy. This is Le Bernardin, not a McDonald's. Some people have absolutely no class." Her voice carried further than she intended, causing several nearby diners to glance over. The man in question looked up from his book, his eyes meeting Madison's for just a moment, There was no anger in his gaze, no embarrassment, just a gentle acknowledgement of her attention before he returned to his reading. This calm response only infuriated Madison more. She was used to getting reactions from people, used to her disapproval having an impact. The fact that this nobody had just dismissed her so casually was unacceptable. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice now loud enough that the entire section could hear. "Don't you think you're a little underdressed for a place like this?" The man looked up again, this time closing his book and placing it gently on the table. When he spoke, his voice was soft but clear, carrying easily across the space between them. "I suppose that depends on what you think the purpose of clothing is," he replied with a slight smile. "I've always believed it was to keep us warm and comfortable, not to impress strangers." The escalation begins. Madison's cheeks flushed red beneath her expertly applied makeup. She had expected him to be embarrassed, to apologize, and maybe even leave. Instead, he had just made her look shallow in front of everyone who was listening, which was now most of the restaurant. "That's exactly the kind of attitude I'd expect from someone who clearly doesn't belong here," she shot back, her voice rising. "This restaurant has a certain standard, a certain clientele. People save for months just to eat here, and you show up looking like you're going to Home Depot." The man's expression remained unchanged, but something shifted in his eyes. Not anger, but perhaps a deeper sadness at what he was witnessing. "You're absolutely right that people save for months to eat here," he said quietly. "I've met several of them tonight, actually. There's a young couple over there," he gestured subtly toward a table near the window, "celebrating their anniversary. They've been planning this dinner for a year. And that gentleman at the bar just proposed to his girlfriend. You can tell by the way his hands are still shaking." Madison glanced around and realized that while she had been focused on criticizing him, he had been observing and appreciating the human moments happening around them. It was infuriating. "What's your point?" she demanded. "My point is that those people aren't here because of the prices or the prestige. They're here because this is where they wanted to create memories with people they love. The cost is just what they have to pay for the experience, not the reason for it." Philosophical battlefield. Madison felt like she was being lectured by someone who clearly didn't understand how the world worked. Her entire brand was built on exclusivity, on making people aspire to a lifestyle they couldn't afford. This man was undermining everything she stood for. "That's a nice sentiment," she said with obvious sarcasm, "but the reality is that places like this exist to separate people like us from people like them. Success has privileges, and if you can't appreciate that, maybe you should stick to Applebee's." The man nodded thoughtfully, as if genuinely considering her words. "You mentioned success," he said. "What does that word mean to you?" "Are you serious?" Madison laughed, a harsh sound that cut through the restaurant's refined atmosphere. "Success means having enough money to go wherever you want, buy whatever you want, and not worry about what things cost. It means influence, power, respect. It means people know who you are. And if you lost all of that tomorrow, the money, the influence, the recognition, what would be left?" The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Madison felt something uncomfortable stirring in her chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. It took her a moment to recognize it as doubt. "That's a stupid question," she snapped. "People don't just lose everything overnight." "Don't they?" The man's voice remained gentle, but there was something in his tone that suggested he had seen exactly that happen. "I've known people who had everything the world said mattered, and then one day they didn't. Some of them discovered they still had everything that actually mattered. Others found they had been empty all along." The crowd gathers. By now, their conversation had drawn the attention of most of the restaurant. Other diners had stopped their own conversations to listen, some obviously uncomfortable with the conflict, others seemingly fascinated by the philosophical battle playing out before them. The servers had slowed their movements, clearly trying to hear what was being said without appearing to eavesdrop. Madison was acutely aware of the audience, and her influencer instincts kicked in. This was content gold, a dramatic confrontation in an exclusive restaurant. She subtly positioned her phone to capture the scene, already mentally crafting the caption that would paint her as the victim of some unhinged stranger's bizarre behavior. "You know what I think?" she said, her voice now pitched for maximum drama. "I think you're jealous. I think you see people like me who have actually made something of ourselves, and it makes you angry because you know you'll never have what we have." The man smiled at this, not mockingly, but with genuine warmth. "You might be right," he admitted. "There are certainly things you have that I don't. Your dress is beautiful. That's a Hermes piece, isn't it? I can tell because my friend worked on designs like that before she started her own company. And your jewelry is stunning. But may I ask you something?" Madison was thrown off balance by his acknowledgement of her expensive taste. She had expected him to dismiss material things entirely, not demonstrate knowledge about luxury fashion. "What?" she asked suspiciously. "When you put on that dress this morning, how did it make you feel?" "What kind of question is that?" "A genuine one. Did it make you feel beautiful, confident, happy? Or did it make you feel like you looked successful to other people?" The mirror moment. Madison opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. The question had hit something she didn't want to examine too closely. The truth was, she could barely remember the last time she had chosen an outfit because it made her feel good, rather than because it would photograph well for Instagram. That's not the point," she stammered. "The point is that some people work hard to build lives where they can enjoy nice things, and other people," she gestured at his casual attire, "apparently don't care about presenting themselves properly." "You're absolutely right that I don't care much about how I present myself to strangers," the man agreed. "But I'm curious about something. You mentioned working hard to build your life. What kind of work do you do?" Madison straightened in her chair, back on familiar ground. "I'm an entrepreneur. I built a personal brand from nothing, and now I have over 2 million followers across all platforms. I influence purchasing decisions for hundreds of thousands of people. Brands pay me 6 figures just to wear their products or recommend their services." "That's genuinely impressive," he said, and Madison could tell he meant it. "You've built something significant. But can I ask what you're trying to accomplish with all that influence?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what change are you hoping to create in the world? What legacy are you building?" Madison felt that uncomfortable doubt creeping back in. The truth was, she had never really thought about her influence in terms of creating positive change. Her focus had always been on growing her follower count, increasing her engagement rates, and securing more lucrative brand partnerships. "I help people aspire to better lives," she said, but the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. "And what makes a life better?" The breaking point. "You know what?" Madison stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I don't know who you think you are, sitting there in your garage sale outfit, questioning my life choices like you're some kind of philosopher, but I've had enough of this conversation." The entire restaurant was now openly staring. Madison's face was flushed, her carefully styled hair slightly disheveled from her dramatic gestures. She looked around at all the watching faces and realized that she had created exactly the kind of scene she usually criticized other people for making. "You want to know what I think?" she continued, her voice now sharp with anger. "I think you're exactly the kind of person who drags society down. No ambition, no drive, no desire to improve yourself or contribute anything meaningful. You probably live in some tiny apartment and think that makes you more authentic than people who've actually succeeded in life." The man listened to this tirade without interrupting, his expression never changing from one of gentle attention. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment before responding. "You're probably right about some of that," he said softly. "I do live simply, and I don't have much interest in accumulating wealth or status symbols, but I wonder if we might define contributing something meaningful differently." "Oh, please," Madison scoffed. "What could you possibly contribute that matters?" That's when the server appeared at the man's table, approaching with obvious nervousness about interrupting the scene that had been playing out. "Excuse me, Mr. Reeves," the young server said quietly. "I hate to disturb you, but the kitchen wanted me to let you know that your order is ready, and also," he glanced around nervously, There's someone at the bar who says you helped pay for their meal last year when their card was declined. They wanted to say thank you if you don't mind. The name hit Madison like a physical blow. Mr. Reeves. Keanu Reeves. She stood there, frozen, as the pieces crashed together in her mind. The simple clothes, the thoughtful responses, the gentle demeanor, the philosophical questions about what really mattered in life. She had just spent the last 20 minutes publicly berating Keanu Reeves, one of the most beloved actors in the world, a man famous not just for his movies, but for his legendary kindness and humility. Around her, she could hear the whispers starting as other diners began to realize what had just happened. Someone at a nearby table was discreetly taking photos. Her phone, which she had positioned to capture her confrontation with some random nobody, had instead recorded her attacking one of Hollywood's most respected figures. Keanu looked up at the server and smiled. "Thank you, Marcus. And yes, of course I'd be happy to say hello to them." But first, he turned back to Madison, who was still standing frozen beside her table. "I believe we were having a conversation." Madison felt like she might be sick. Every word she had said, every assumption she had made, every cruel comment about his appearance and his worth, it had all been directed at someone who regularly gave millions to charity, who was known for treating everyone from A-list directors to craft services workers with equal respect, who had quietly helped countless people without ever seeking recognition for it. I didn't," she started, but no coherent words would come. "Please, sit down," Keanu said gently. "You asked what kind of contribution I might make to the world. Would you like to hear about some of the things I try to do?" The education. Madison sank back into her chair, her legs feeling suddenly weak. Around them, the restaurant had gone completely quiet, everyone straining to hear what would happen next. "I don't really like talking about this stuff," Keanu began, "because I think the moment you start doing charity work for recognition, it stops being charity and becomes marketing. But since you asked..." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I started a foundation that funds cancer research, particularly for children's hospitals. I don't put my name on it because the work is more important than the credit. I've helped fund a few schools and communities that needed them. When I see someone struggling, like that person at the bar who had their card declined, I try to help quietly if I can." Madison felt smaller with each word. She thought about her own charitable giving, which consisted mainly of posting about causes during trending awareness weeks and keeping careful track of every donation for tax purposes. "But honestly," Keanu continued, "the thing I'm most proud of isn't the money I've given away. It's the small moments, taking time to really listen to people, treating everyone with the same respect regardless of their job or status, trying to make someone's day a little brighter when I can. Those interactions don't cost anything, but I think they might be the most valuable thing any of us can offer." He looked directly at Madison as he said this, and she realized he was offering her something she had never expected, a lesson without judgment, wisdom without condemnation. "You mentioned success earlier," he said. "I've been fortunate to have what most people would call a successful career. I've made movies that people enjoy, I've earned more money than I could spend in several lifetimes, and yes, people recognize me on the street. But none of that feels like the real success." "What does?" Madison asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Going to bed each night, knowing that I tried to leave the world a little better than I found it, knowing that I treated people with kindness, knowing that when I had the opportunity to help someone, I took it. The rest is just noise." The transformation. Madison sat in silence for a long moment, processing not just what Keanu had said, but how fundamentally it challenged everything she had built her life around. She thought about her 2 million followers, her six-figure brand deals, her carefully curated image of success and luxury. What was she actually giving them besides the message that their lives weren't good enough unless they looked like hers? "I owe you an apology," she said finally, her voice stronger now. "Actually, I owe you more than that. I was awful to you. I made assumptions based on how you looked. I was rude and judgmental and..." She gestured helplessly. "Everything I said was wrong." Keanu shook his head. You don't need to apologize to me, but maybe think about apologizing to yourself. What do you mean? I mean, you seem like someone who cares about making a difference, or you wouldn't have gotten so passionate about our conversation. But somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself that your worth was tied to what you owned and how you looked. That must be exhausting. Madison felt tears threatening to spill over her carefully applied makeup. It was exhausting. The constant pressure to look perfect, to buy the right things, to project an image of effortless success while actually working 18-hour days to maintain it all. When was the last time she had felt genuinely happy rather than just successful? I don't know how to be different, she admitted. My whole career, my whole identity, it's all built on this. You don't have to throw it all away, Keanu said gently. You have a platform that reaches millions of people. Imagine what you could do if you used it to encourage them to be kind to each other, to value character over possessions, to find ways to help their communities. You could probably create more positive change than most of us ever could. The choice. Madison looked around the restaurant, suddenly seeing it differently. The couple celebrating their anniversary wasn't just a demographic to market to. They were two people in love, sharing a moment they would remember forever. The man who had proposed at the bar wasn't a potential follower to gain. He was someone experiencing one of the most important nights of his life. The person at the bar, she said suddenly. The one whose card was declined last year. You really helped them? Keanu nodded. It wasn't a big deal. They were on a date, clearly nervous, and when their payment didn't go through, you could see how mortified they were. I just asked the server to put it on my tab. Everyone deserves to feel dignified, especially in moments that matter to them. Madison thought about all the times she had walked past people who needed help, too focused on her phone or her next appointment to notice. She thought about the stories she could tell, the kindness she could promote, the difference she could make if she shifted her focus from getting people to buy things to encouraging them to care about each other. Would you, she started, then stopped, suddenly shy. Would you mind if I asked you more about the foundation? The cancer research one? I have a platform, and I know I've used it for shallow things, but maybe I could use it for something better. For the first time that evening, Keanu's smile reached his eyes completely. I think that would be wonderful. Has the new beginning. As the evening progressed, Madison found herself in the most meaningful conversation she had had in years. Keanu told her about the children's hospitals he visited, about the research projects that were making real differences in young lives, about the simple joy of knowing that resources were going to people who could use them to help others. More importantly, he listened as Madison talked about her own experiences, the pressure she felt to maintain her image, the emptiness she sometimes felt despite her success, the genuine desire she had buried under layers of brand management to actually matter in people's lives. You know, she said as the evening wound down, I came here tonight planning to take photos of my meal for Instagram. I was going to caption it something about living my best life and watch the likes roll in. But this conversation, this actually feels like living. Keanu laughed softly. Don't stop taking photos of your food if it makes you happy. Just maybe balance it with some photos of you helping people or stories about others who are making a difference. Show your followers what fulfillment actually looks like. As they prepared to leave, Madison did something she hadn't done in months. She put her phone away without documenting the moment. This wasn't content to be consumed. It was a turning point to be lived. Thank you, she said to Keanu as they stood to go. Not just for the conversation, but for showing me what grace looks like when someone attacks you for no reason. We all have moments when we're not our best selves, he replied. What matters is what we do with the opportunity to grow, the ripple effect. 6 months later, Madison's Instagram had transformed. Instead of endless photos of luxury purchases and exclusive events, her feed showcased volunteer work at local shelters, fundraising campaigns for children's cancer research, and stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things in their communities. Her follower count had initially dropped as some people lost interest in her less materialistic content. But engagement was higher than ever, and the comments section had evolved from shallow praise for her outfits to meaningful discussions about how followers were implementing kindness in their own lives. She still wore nice clothes and enjoyed good food, but these things had become accessories to a life focused on purpose rather than the purpose itself. The dress she wore to events mattered less than the causes she was supporting. The restaurants she visited became opportunities to tip generously and treat service workers with respect rather than just backdrops for photos. Most importantly, she had learned to see people, really see them. The server who was working 2 jobs to pay for college, the elderly man who came to the coffee shop every day just to have someone to talk to, the young mother struggling with a stroller on the subway stairs. Each person became an opportunity to practice the kindness that Keanu had shown her that night. The lesson learned. The story of Madison's confrontation with Keanu Reeves became legendary in certain circles, though she never publicly confirmed the details. What mattered more than the viral potential was the personal transformation it had sparked. She often thought back to that night at Le Bernardin, remembering how confident she had been in her judgments, how certain she was that external appearances revealed internal worth. The man in worn jeans and a simple t-shirt had taught her more about success, influence, and character than all her business mentors combined. The most profound lesson wasn't about avoiding assumptions or treating celebrities with respect. It was about recognizing that every person she encountered had the potential to teach her something valuable, if only she approached them with curiosity rather than judgment. In interviews about her career change, Madison would often say, "I used to think influence meant getting people to want what I had. Now I know it means inspiring people to become the best version of themselves. The first approach makes you money. The second approach makes you matter." The lasting impact. Years later, the Children's Cancer Foundation that Madison had started supporting sent her a photo of their newest research facility. In the corner of the image, she could see a small plaque that simply read, "Funded by people who believe kindness is contagious." She never found out if Keanu had seen her transformation, though she hoped he had. But more than his approval, she valued the approval of the person she saw in the mirror each morning. Someone who had learned that true luxury wasn't about what you could afford to buy, but what you could afford to give. The entitled influencer who had attacked a stranger in a restaurant was gone, replaced by someone who understood that the most powerful influence of all was the example you set through how you treated other people. And every time she walked into a restaurant, she made sure to notice not just what everyone was wearing, but the stories they were living, the moments they were creating, and the opportunities she had to make their day a little brighter. Because sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected teachers, and the biggest transformations begin with the smallest acts of grace.